So now let's get started at creating an inventory system. And off screen, what I've done is pretty much subtract everything to do with the inventory that we have seen so far. That is so that I can take it from the very beginning and piece together the inventory step by step. The only thing that this scene contains that still has traces of the inventory system is the fact that the cube, the cylinder and the sphere objects still have the word inventory in their names. But that is not terribly important. That is simply a naming convention. You will see that for each of these objects, they have collider components, and these colliders have been marked as triggers. That is so that the player can pass through them as opposed to react with them as though they were solid objects. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and create the user interface part of the inventory. And I'm going to run through this pretty quickly simply because the UI stuff is covered in depth in the Introduction to Unity 5 course. This is not fundamentally an introduction to the Unity 5 GUI system. This is focusing on scripting, but nevertheless I want to show you the steps that I have taken in piecing together the UI. So I'm going to just zoom out here in the view, and I'm going to make sure that we have a 2D view activated here by enabling this toggle button here that says 2D. So I'm going to create a completely new user interface. To do that, I'm going to choose Game Object, UI, and then I'm going to select Canvas here. So I'm going to choose Canvas Object, and here we have a new canvas. Now I'm going to create a completely new empty object as well by choosing Game Object, Create Empty, or I could press Ctrl-Shift-N, and I'm going to call that object Inventory, just to indicate that this is going to be part of the inventory system. I'm going to set that to the world origin and drag and drop the canvas into the inventory here. Now, to ensure that the user interface sizes and resizes to match the appearance of the display, I'm going to make sure that the game tab here is in a 16:9 aspect ratio for the HD resolution. And for the canvas part here in the canvas component, I'm going to make sure that the render mode is set to screen space overlay. This will make sure that the GUI will render on top of everything else. Now for the canvas scaler, it has a UI scale mode, which by default is set to constant pixel size. I want the user interface to be able to stretch and shrink with the screen size, so I'm going to change this from constant pixel size to scale with screen size. And the reference resolution, I'm going to set that to a full HD resolution, which is 1920 by 1080, and press enter on the keyboard to accept that resolution. So that pretty much is everything I need to do with this basic canvas object. In addition to this, you can see here in the Scene tab, we have the limits of the user interface, which covers the dimensions of the screen. Now I'm going to make sure that I select the inventory object here and that I put this onto a UI layer by moving over to the object inspector and setting that to UI. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I want the camera or the scene view here to render the user interface, but I don't want the ordinary game camera to render that interface twice. I don't want this game camera to render the interface parts as well. So I'm going to go to the hierarchy panel and select the main camera here. And in the camera component for the culling mask, if I click on the drop down, I want to make sure that the tick is removed from the UI section so that this main camera is not also rendering the user interface. I want to make sure that the tick is removed there. So I'm going to just exit that and then move back to the inventory object. Now I've created a basic inventory object, it's time to add the panel at the bottom, which will incorporate the inventory items.